say the grass is greener inside, you're invaded. It's a global system because we're accounting for all the resources of the planet and all the people of the planet, not just a select few. So.
And we're back up here on the show. So Zeitgeist. So the world is changing, people, and we're letting people know about it. And part of what's changing is they're paving over Paradise and building parking lots. And we've got Martin Gladstone here. Martin, great to have you here on the show.
Thank you.
It's just so funny. We've had two of your brothers. I don't know how many brothers you have, but
there's four of us all together.
Really?
4 boys.
Okay,
yeah.
So you're the third brother now to be on.
Yeah, we'll get the fourth one on. Zeppo.
Zeppo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great
You're
name.
just saying that, aren't you?
It'll be a family affair. You put all 4 of you one time and have a reunion.
Okay, so let's talk. We're talking about Glenn Davis, and that's not the person. That's the piece of property, right?
The Glenn Davis ravine out in the beach in the East End. Yes.
Okay, so where is this ravine? First of all, I'm trying to
place it. The ravine is on Kingston Road, and it's just east of Main Street, and it just falls down from on the beautiful old lakeshore of what was Lake Iroquois, and it just falls down into the beaches area, which is Glen Davis Crescent.
Okay, so I am visualizing that part of town right now, and so what would it be on the south side of Kingston Road as you move east?
Yes. No, actually, I beg your pardon. It's on the north side of Kingston Road, and actually, I beg your pardon. It's not east; it's west.
Oh.
It's actually west of Main Street, Southwood.
Okay, so
it's called the Upper Beach, but the beaches, like most of Toronto, has beautiful ravine systems that are part of the natural treasures of our city, and this one's particularly gorgeous. And the reason that the residents are fighting this, so to speak, is because the recognition. This was the ravine that was actually protected by the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto, 20 years ago, sent its lawyers and its team to the OMB, which is the Ontario Municipal Board, which governs land use in Ontario, and had this designated as a ravine. The residents went through the fight, they put up the money, and they had it designated as a ravine. This is in the early 90s. And in 2005, thereabouts, a developer buys it, knowing it's a designated ravine, puts in an application to rezone it, which succeeds, and then is now going to the OMB for final hearing. So what's really critical in all this is what we recognize is that if this ravine is designated, redesignated, rezoned from being a ravine into a condominium commercial development, it really sets the worst possible precedent for all the ravines in the City of Toronto.
Well, that's probably good news for Rob Ford and his supporters because just think of the money that the city can save by selling all the parkland in the city and building houses or something else on it.
People have the impression that ravines are sacrosanct, like parks are in the City of Toronto, but we're finding out just the opposite. In fact, they're being treated as if they're completely disposable. And what's even worse about this, the city, the planning department of the city, and this is a whole other issue about why the planning department in Toronto was broken, which everybody knows, but they actually approved this subject to 43 conditions. And they're major conditions. It's not like the developer had to come and say, I can satisfy you that the geotechnical studies are correct, there's no drainage issues, there won't be more erosion. They didn't have to satisfy anything. They basically said, just approve it, and we'll get to the satisfying these other 43 conditions later. And they're pretty big conditions. They have to do with drainage, water, and you have homes and residents living at the bottom of this ravine, and they're going to be seriously affected. Possibly by drainage and runoff and erosion that's going to happen. It's going to be very, very destructive.
Okay. I'm still trying to picture the ravine because if I'm going westbound on Kingston Road, west of Main Street, if I remember correctly, there's like a series of low-rise apartment buildings and single-family dwellings. Where's the ravine exactly? Is it behind that?
Yes, that's
buildings?
Correct. You will see an 8-story apartment building that was built in the 50s when there was no environmental protections they threw up, and then you'll see a series of old, looks very dilapidated houses that are to be torn down, and behind that is the Glen Davis ravine.
Okay, and then does that ravine connect with other ravines?
Yes,
or
yes.
Where does it connect?
It goes around the ridge to parts of Ben Lomond, and then it connects with all these underground water systems. All the streets in the area, like Brookside and of all the names that tell us about all the water and the tributary systems that are all buried now. So the city was built, but it does connect ecologically with all the other ravine systems in the city of Toronto.
Okay, so can you explain something to me? I'm a little bit confused. There's 43 different conditions. How will that affect the process?
How will it affect the process? Right. Well, we go to a process called the Ontario Municipal Board. And for those of you who are familiar with it, it's an unelected appointed body that really takes away the democratic rights of communities to decide what kind of development might be appropriate in their particular neighborhood. When you go to the OMB, their focus is simply on what's called intensification, putting up buildings, intensifying main arteries, and they have no consideration for what can happen ecologically and the fact that this land could be ecologically protected and designated as a ravine. So when we go to the OMB, it's a really high mountain to climb. So we the residents, here's the kicker, okay? The developer has all the resources. They have the lawyers, they have the money, they have the experts, and we the residents who have to fight this have to fundraise at a grassroots level and hire our own lawyers and experts, because it becomes a battle of the experts at the Ontario Municipal Board level. And that's the challenge we're facing right now.
Yeah, didn't the OMB used to be, I mean, hasn't it sort of, at one point it was more of it was there to sort of protect the environment from development, that sort of thing, and then its political mandate has just subtly shifted, and now they're more of a rubber stamp for developers?
Yes. Its political mandate shifted during the Harris years in Ontario, surprisingly enough, and it's been statistically proven that 90% of the time it will favor developers over residents. So that's a huge issue. Now I just want to add that Ontario is the only province in Canada to still have something like an Ontario Municipal Board. In every other province in Canada, they've abolished them, and residents can get together and say to a developer, we're not against your developing, but we'd like you to stay within the footprint of the ravine. You bought this knowing this was a ravine. We have no objections. But what's happening here is we don't have the same power to do that, because this appointed, unelected, unaccountable body gets to make the final decision.
Okay.
So how can we abolish? I mean, is there any way that since the other provinces have done that, what can we do to prevent?
Well, if we get a new government in Ontario, under the current government, it's never been an issue. The Conservative government has never been an issue. There are certain parties that would possibly consider abolishing the OMB. But the issue really is, when we're speaking here, is that these are the facts we're dealing with. These are the facts on the ground. This is what we're stuck in.
Yes.
And for the residents, the key thing is for residents trying to save a ravine is they have to raise funds. They have to raise money.
Right.
That's the thing. And we have a website, friendsofglendavisravine.ca, which we'll talk about. But we're encouraging people to go there and to help us. We're set up on PayPal. Even if you give us $10 or $20, we need this money to pay for experts at the OMB level. Because I mean, I don't live directly behind the Glen Davis Ravine, but I recognize, so it's not a NIMBY issue, but I recognize, like other residents, that if this ravine is just allowed to be trucked away with a 47-unit 6-story condo, it's going to be a death bell for all the ravines in Toronto once this precedent is set.
Okay, let me ask you before we get into that. How big of the property we're talking about? Like how many acres or hectares?
Oh, it's the property in development. Or the actual ravine. The ravine is a few acres large. It's pretty significant. It goes down a beautiful slope, and then there's a large area that then borders on various backyards.
Okay, so we're talking about the development in question here is only on a part of that ravine?
Yes, it's on Kingston Road. The front of it would be on Kingston Road, and then it would be going down the slope of the ravine, virtually to where the abuts the residents' properties below.
Okay, so currently that piece of property is, like what percentage of that whole ravine would that the property that's
I'll take an educated guess. It's probably
Okay.
about 10%.
10% of the whole ravine.
But what happens is once this particular condominium goes up, then we can see a whole slew of condos going up along Kingston Road. And in the bigger picture, what it's going to do is it's going to eat into the side of the ravine where they're going to put a 3-level parking garage.
Right.
And you also have to appreciate that this proposed condominium development, which the developer says they're not prepared to mediate about at this time, is going to be 6 stories high, cast a shadow about 80 feet, and in the absence of sunlight, virtually all, not just the properties will be put into the dark below, but the natural ecosystem of the ravine is going to be severely altered, because in the absence of light, you're going to lose your plants, your trees. Nothing can grow. It's going to be dark, and I'll just share with you that when the developer at a community meeting put forward what was called a shadow study to try to show that in fact the light won't be affected, the residents challenged it and said the study was flawed. And they actually went to the Ontario Architects Association and had the architect disciplined. But again, it all falls on the residents who are fighting this.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to ruin the whole atmosphere. I mean,
So
the
what is
park
it?
is a park.
Yeah, what is it now? Is it just, does it look from the street, is it just a vacant lot now
There
that
are-
goes down into the ravine?
Yeah, well, there are some dilapidated buildings that are real eyesores,
Yeah.
and we'd like to see them gone. And what we'd like to see is the developer, like we shouldn't be at cross purposes on this, okay? What we'd like to see is the developer put in perhaps a series of townhouses or work within the current footprint. I mean, this is what's crazy. The developer bought the property knowing it was designated as a ravine, knowing there was a ravine bylaw in Toronto that protects this property, but regardless of that, is able to sail through due to resources and lawyers and regardless of that, sail through and have the property, an application, rezoned to have it to a condo. That's what's crazy. It should have been killed right from the get-go.
Because it's, again, there's a bylaw against it.
Well, that's the other issue that's come forward, is everybody assumes because there's a ravine bylaw in Toronto that our ravines are sacrosanct, they're automatically protected, and they're not at all. All that bylaw speaks to is that you can't remove trees or alter the slope of a ravine, but it says nothing about having it rezoned.
Okay, so what does this say about, you know, the state of the city now, the city of Toronto under the new regime of Rob Ford with the cutbacks and that sort of thing? I mean, what does this, is this sort of just one sort of small thread of, or is it kind of portend a kind of development environment we're looking going forward?
Well, this bylaw was passed, I think, around early in 2001, 2002. I'm sure it was done during, and it had a good intention. It was to protect ravines. So it really has, and out of fairness, it's got nothing to do with the current regime at City Hall. It's not really related to that. But the point, what's really become an eye-opener is the fact that it has no teeth. And what we've done is we've met with our city councillor, Mary Margaret McMahon, who is going to undertake to put a coalition of like-minded councillors together, because she's very environmentally conscious and she recognizes this is a serious problem because all ravines are now exposed. And so the first order of business is to at least get the ravine bylaw in Toronto written in such a way that residents don't have this problem. This land should just be sacrosanct the way public parks are.
How do you think the city will react to that kind of thinking? Because we've got a new kind of approach to municipal government here in Toronto.
Yes. I think it probably would have been more favorably received under the former regime of David Miller. I think so. I mean, David Miller took a lot of pride in his environmental consciousness of the city of Toronto, and I think most people recognize that. What we might find is we get into a competition, a more polarized competition between developers and those who want to save ravine land. So it's hard to say. But I cannot imagine councillors standing up and saying that ravines are disposable. In fact, I'd be shocked. That's the shocking thing. In fact, it's not this. What's so shocking about this is that the residents are fighting and putting on fundraisers and hiring lawyers and experts to save ravines, and it's the city who should be doing this.
Okay. Now, Martin, we're just about out of time here. So is there any final thoughts you want to leave us with? And we're going to give out the contact info, and maybe you can suggest something that people can do to help.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I'm going to say two things. One is the Glen Davis issue affects everybody in the city of Toronto, because if this ravine can be trucked away, any ravine can. And again, I'm going to reiterate that we're in a fundraising stage. We really need to get some funds. And if people can visit our website and help us out, it would be really, really appreciated. We're going to the OMB in September, so the sooner the better.
Okay, and that website again?
www.friendsofglendavisravine.ca, just as it sounds.
.ca.
Yes.
Okay.
Just
great.
as it sounds.
So that's don't even have to spell it. People should know how to spell all that.
We hope.
friendsofglendavisravine.ca.
Right.
So thank you, Martin, for coming in.
Thanks for
Tell us
having me.
about this, and good luck with this.
Thank you, Hugh and Vanessa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
So let's take a quick break, Vanessa, because we're going to come back with Lore, Amphilak, and Alec. Well, I don't know who's coming on. We got a whole bunch of them here, and I'm not sure exactly who's coming on, but we're going to talk about some really interesting ways to move your business and your life forward right after this. ThatChannel.com.